And in the next moment, this incredible peace came over me. And it was God. And he hugged me. I mean, he literally hugged me. And he told me that everything was going to be all right and that I was going to be all right.
You're watching the Spotlight Network, starring Hollywood's newsman, Logan Crawford.
They now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a powerful book. It is called What on Earth Are We Doing? It is a wonderful book. It is deeply moving, and it's written by a terrific author. Her name is Allison Shawn. It is based on real-life trials and triumphs. This inspirational journey explores 7 pivotal choices we all face that shape our faith, legacy, and purpose. From the brink of despair to divine strength, Allison's story reminds us that no matter what we've been through, God's plan for your life is never out of reach. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Allison, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on the show. I think we've got the people at home who are watching intrigued by these 7 life-defining choices that you talk about in your book. Let's go through a couple. What would you say was number 1 if you could rank them?
Number 1 is the first choice, and that is actually not a choice that we get to make, but it was God's choice, and that was God's choice to make each and every one of us. And not only did he make us and created us, but he created us so uniquely as individuals and so specifically with absolute purposes for each one of us to fulfill in our life, to be a part of his story. And learning what those unique purposes is the most exciting part of life.
What are some of those unique purposes? I'd imagine they're different for each person, right?
They are, but some of them are very much the same. And if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you a little story about how I figured out that very first purpose.
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So 38 years ago, I was 16 years old, and it was a beautiful summer day, just like it is here in Minnesota today. And I was taking my brother and his friend, who were only 14 at the time, and I was driving them to their golf lesson. And I got the boys loaded in the car, got their golf clubs, and we come to a stop sign in an intersection in our town, which isn't very big, but we had to cross over this highway. And to be honest, I don't know what happened after being at that stop sign because I don't remember. But what I do know is that the next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital. What happened in between was that we pulled out into the intersection and we were broadsided by an 18-wheel, fully loaded semi-truck. And it hit our car and crushed it like a tin can and threw it 30 feet into the air. And we went across the highway and just landed inches before we hit a telephone pole. So we are very lucky, all 3 of us, to be alive. But what happened was there was a police officer behind the truck that hit us, and he called for help immediately. We had firemen, we had police officers, we had the EMTs, and we even had a helicopter rescue crew that came from the nearest trauma center and got all 3 of us to the hospital, and it saved our lives. But I know that God was with us during that, but that's not what brought me to understand the most important choice in my life, being his choice. It wasn't until after we got home from the hospital. We got home, and my brother and I, we were laying around on the couch quite a bit, trying to recover and recuperate from all of our injuries. And one afternoon, the telephone rang, my mom answered the phone. This was before cell phones, but she answered the phone, and the woman on the line asked if she could speak to me. So I take the phone, and she introduced herself, but I didn't know who she was. I didn't recognize her name, but she said she knew about my story about the car accident, and she just was seeing how we were doing and if we were recovering well. But she asked me a question that I just wasn't expecting. She wanted to know if we had any plans to try and get a stoplight put in at that intersection. The thought had never even crossed my mind. For one thing, I was dealing with all head injuries. I was dealing with a lot of pain. I had amnesia. And the thought about trying to get a stoplight put up at this intersection just wasn't even on my radar screen. But her story started to unfold. And I asked her why she was asking me that. And she told me that her daughter, who is also 16 years old, had been at that very exact same intersection just 1 week prior to our accident. She lived in the next town, but she was working a part-time job, and she was on her way home from work. And she was also broadsided by a semi-truck in that exact same intersection. And as this mom's story unfolded, I quickly learned that her daughter's outcome was not the same as ours, and she didn't survive. She didn't make it. And when she told me that, it just broke my heart. And I just felt like I'd been sucker punched. I didn't even know how to react or what to say to this poor woman who just lost her daughter. How incredibly heartbreaking that must have been. I don't remember how I ended that phone call, but I went to my bedroom and I shut the door and I sat on my bed. And for the first time since my own car accident, I just sobbed. I was in so much pain. Physically, my whole body was a mess. And I was overwhelmed by what this woman had just told me. And so grateful to be alive, but yet I was feeling so guilty to be alive since she lost her daughter. And the tears were just coming down, and I just couldn't stop. And I just like, God, what is going on? Why did this happen to us? Why did this happen to her? Why did she die? Why did we live? I don't know. And I was beside myself. And in the next moment, this incredible peace came over me. And it was God. And he hugged me. I mean, he literally hugged me. And he told me that everything was going to be all right and that I was going to be all right. And this was the first time in my life that I had ever really experienced God, and that to know that he really loved me. And I should have known better because I grew up in a Christian home. I went to church. I went to vacation Bible school. I went to communion. I went through confirmation. So I knew who God was and I believed in God. But what I didn't understand at that point in my life was how much he loved me personally, and that he cared about what was really going on in my life. And so in my book, when I talk about my journey, there are a lot of other stories that come along of other hard things that I've gone through. But the first thing I had to realize in my own faith journey was how much God actually loved me, and that he made every single person for a reason. And there are many reasons, but to know him personally is the number one reason.
Amazing. It's an amazing story. You were 16 years old. From that point forward, were you a changed person?
I think the most important thing when I was 16 is that biggest lesson was to learn that life is short.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're 16 or like my grandfather just passed away last year. He was almost 102.
Wow.
And he would tell you that even at 102, life is short and it goes by fast. And so I think it was a blessing to learn that lesson at a really young age. Now, did my faith, it jump-started, but it wasn't solid. It hadn't grown completely yet. I was only 16. And there were a lot more lessons that I still had to learn. And there were a lot of other hard things that came along that were even harder than being hit by a semi-truck. And you would think that would be hard, and it was, but other things came along in my life that were even harder. And I had to learn how to overcome those things, how to get through them, and to where I was going to find the strength to get through those other things. And knowing God was my foundation, but I had to build that foundation, and it had to grow, and my relationship with God had to grow. And it took time for me to learn that and understand that.
Was there ever a time you felt like giving up and saying, this is too much, and you kind of turned against God?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. After my car accident, about 15 years later, for one thing, I got really sick, and I spent 8 years going back and forth between different doctors, only to be essentially diagnosed with 6 different incurable autoimmune diseases, primarily lupus, which only 1% of the population has, and only 1% of people who have lupus have another complication I have called shrinking lung syndrome. It makes it really hard for me to breathe, which is essential to life, right? And so it's really frustrating when you can't breathe. After that, I went through a very painful divorce. I mean, divorce happens way too often, and no situation is ever good. But my ex-husband, we met in high school, we dated through college, we were married, we had a beautiful daughter together, and I found out in the worst way that he was having an affair and with a coworker, and she was pregnant. It turned my world upside down and just shattered everything I ever thought I knew in a minute. And that was incredibly hard. I've also dealt with depression, and I'm currently, life is not a fairy tale. It's not all figured out. It's not all right. But my one and only daughter hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. So yes, there have been times where I have hit rock bottom. And one time in particular was on Christmas Eve, and I was curled up in a ball in front of the Christmas tree, and I just was done. I'm like, Lord, this is all too hard. This is more than I can handle physically and emotionally. And I'm frustrated, and I'm hurt, and I'm tired, and I don't know what else to do. So if you want me to live, you have to give me the strength, because I don't have it. And again, he came, and in one breath, he gave me peace. And he said, you can do this. I'm with you. I love you. And I have a purpose and a plan for your life. And it was enough to give me the strength to literally get up off the floor and to stand up and to take my next breath and to take my next step. And when you deal with depression, that is something that doesn't just go away. This is something I've had to learn how to manage and deal with and overcome. And I know that I have. And I know it's something I'm going to live with for the rest of my life as well. But whether it's a car accident, whether it's a relationship problem, a job issue, finances, whatever, life throws at us one problem after another, after another, after another. And what I've learned is how to live what I call fit for real life. I've had to learn this through everything I've been through, but God taught me this. And living fit to me is living by faith, with integrity, living out life as best that I can, the way God wants us to, and to trust him always through all circumstances. And that has given me the foundation for living a happy life regardless of all the hard things I've been going through. As I've gone through this fit for real life, it made me realize that there are 7 choices that we all face in life at one point in time. And whether we realize it or not, but writing this book was more about just telling my story. I wanted also for readers to be engaged for their own life and overcoming the hard things in their life and dealing with forgiveness and building a foundation of values, and for also realizing that their life and their choices will leave a legacy, for better or worse. We all leave a legacy. And I wanted to give the readers a perspective. My story is just an example. There are many, many people who have been through hard things and have come to faith because of how God has worked in their life. But these 7 choices are something I really want people to consider for their own life.
Wonderful.
And it will make a difference.
It will make a difference. It's a powerful message. I think it will resonate with readers and our viewers as well. The name of the book we're talking about today is What on Earth Are We Doing? The book reminds us that we have choices and our choices matter, and so does our faith. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.